Welcome back, Nuggets. This mother clock has got some thoughts. Let's ruffle some feathers and get into the video. And if you would like to support my tiny chick of a channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype, and go check out my other videos while you're here. Okay, my nuggets, this is video 3 of 4. I cannot believe this needed to be a series rather than the one big video that I had planned. But if you haven't already, go back and check out the first and second. And as always, a big thank you to Salty Crab for allowing me to use her videos as a foundation for this one. And since this is an unofficial sequel to those, do recommend you go out and check those because there is a lot of sass and a lot of really good points and a whole lot of brilliant examples for each point. Editing Vera here. I know this is way later than I intended to get this out, but several of you really hoped that this series would be completed, and I promise it will be. Everything is already recorded. It's just a matter of editing it and not having breaking news things happening in between. So I know that since I started this, obviously Amber has gone through her demonetization stuff. And so the playing field has shifted a little bit, but I still think that these are very valuable lessons. And should she come back, we know what we're looking for. So without further ado, let's get into this video. Welcome to the autumn of Amber, where everything is darkening. That harvest never came. Anger at the failed crop, everything unaliving. And why didn't this work? Phase 3, the blame game, juvenile deflection. Okay, so this phase of the cycle is officially called indignation. I didn't feel like it quite fit because this entire phase is essentially defensiveness and temper tantrums, pretty much, in a nutshell. There you go. You don't have to watch the video. Good job, Nuggets. Let's go. Okay, but let's break it down because I do think that for the most part, this is probably the phase that starts to deviate from a lot of people that get caught in this kind of cycle. I think for the most part, if you've built adulting skills, you're probably handling this phase quite a bit different. It's still there, but different. You'll see what I mean. So let's get into it.
And that brings us to today's topic of discussion, which is phase 3, the indignation phase. And that's going to be her basically being, pissed off at the audience. She's finally going to address, whatever plan she had talked about doing. And she's going to be like, yeah, I'm not doing it anymore. So what? She's going to film herself eating a bunch of junk food. She's going to say it's all the haters' fault. How dare you people question me, criticize me. I'm going to do what I want to do. I have BED, I have BPD, and you're just going to sit there and watch me do it. So that's why it's called the indignation phase.
Okay, so I think the mukbangs in this phase are very, very different to the mukbangs in phase 2, where I think they were a desperate grab at just more dopamine, like anything to feel something. These come off as just utter defiance. It's almost like throwing it back in the viewers' faces, the ones that had all of this hope for her in phase 1. It's like, I'm going to do what I want. You can't stop me. So it has that kind of vibe about it. But there are so many mukbangs in this phase. And you'll see what I mean.
So the first thing on the list for phase 3 is fast food / junk food mukbangs.
And you'll see what I mean because in phase 3, she really kind of flip-flops between being the aggressor and being the victim. So it's very like, get them, but oh no, don't come back for me sort of vibe about it. And these mukbangs, they're not just for content and they're not just eating. They're like, it's almost like she's saying, you want me to eat healthy? Well, watch this. Or you think I should lose weight? I'll show you. It's like almost a weaponized consumption and yet again, performed rebellion.
So next on the list, we have hair at near peak greasiness. I'm not going to include a montage of clips of her hair being greasy. As you watch this video, you will be able to see for yourself that in these clips, the hair's looking pretty greasy. But the next thing we're gonna watch is her addressing comments, specifically haters' comments, which is pretty much just people who want her to take accountability, and she calls them haters. Now, you'll notice too that in the clips we're about to watch, they were taken from videos where Amberlynn has titled the video something regarding addressing comments or addressing rumors. So this isn't just something where, I caught a clip of her happening to mention something that someone said about her or to her. These are actual full videos that she wants to point out to you. Hey, I am addressing something in this video. I'm addressing things people are saying. And that's why it's part of phase 3. She's wanting you to notice that whatever you've been saying about her, whatever rumors that you've been spreading around about her, she's going to address them and she's going to let you know what she thinks.
So in this video, I have 77 rumors or assumptions. So if you guys are watching this and you're just automatically going to call me a liar, then move on. I'm just letting you guys know I was not fired from my job. I'm not meaning to be rude or harsh in any way right now, but I was not fired from my job. I told you guys that I originally stopped filming because I just wanted a break. I wanted to spend time with Tommy. Plus, this time of year, I always get in this weird, depressive state. I realized how, so much of YouTube, literally made me unhappy. So coming from, the high and the happiness and just, wow, just, feeling light and free in my normal everyday life, and then all of a sudden, every time I go on YouTube, there's just new rumors and there's this and there's that happening and I'm harassed. And
yes, it was totally the hater's fault and not at all the fact that she was in a toxic and allegedly abusive relationship.
Okay, so I'm getting comments that I'm lying, that I do drink. I have not drank in almost a year, and the questionnaire about alcohol was about in the last month.
It's almost like the vibe that I get from phase 2 and phase 3 and I guess even phase 4 is it's almost like moving through the phases of grief, like she's grieving the loss of her goal that was never met, because this is complete and utter anger at this stage and deflection, and the previous phase was denial, and it's interesting to watch, but she just can't help herself but address the quote-unquote haters, which Salty Crab is exactly right. They're just people holding her to accountability, and I do actually think that there's a lot of people that really want to see her succeed, that every time she hit the phase 1 of the cycle, that yeah, we want this to be the real one that works. And it's difficult watching all of the history where we kind of have seen her repeatedly fail without a single success, actually. And so it's difficult to not take that history and overlay it to the current cycle. But the addressing the haters, it is just another version of, well, A, she's creating a little bit of a distraction, but B, it's also her giving into what she's feeling in that moment. It's like somebody left a message for me and that made me feel bad. So I want to make them feel bad, or I want to let them know that it made me feel bad. And I think she would have a much healthier relationship with her viewers if she didn't do this part of the phase. It's a very kind of juvenile way of handling a negative reaction.
So the next thing on the list says weight loss goals finally addressed. She has abandoned them. And see, what happens if you're new to Amberlynn or you just maybe haven't noticed this before, but what happens is during phase 1, she will start whatever weight loss plan, whatever 100 days of counting calories or weighing in or whatever she decides to do in phase 1. And as time goes on and she hits phase 2, you hear about that less and less. And so people start getting curious. Well, are you still doing Weight Watchers? What's going on with the whole 100 days of counting calories? Why haven't we heard about that lately? And when she gets to phase 3, she finally addresses that and lets you know, I quit that. And a lot of times she'll be like, I quit that a while ago. And the thing is, her attitude is never like, oh yeah, oh my God, I'm so disappointed. I'm so sorry I let you guys down. I feel so bad. No, it's just, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. Here's a bunch of excuses why. Let's just move on.
And Salty is exactly right. That's why I say there is a real defiance to this stage. And I actually think the mounting pressure from the audience asking questions is actually what sparks phase 3, because it gets to like a certain point where she just can't handle that anymore, and she can't hide it anymore, and she can't pretend to ignore it anymore. And that's where it sparks the rage, and that's where we get phase 3. So in essence, because she can't avoid it anymore, it brings out that shame, because yeah, she's been caught now not doing it again, and that shame for a narcissist is unbearable. So essentially what we're getting is shame plus defensiveness equals rage, and that's what we're getting in phase 3. And the thing is that Amber absolutely doesn't understand. And maybe some of you listening are still coming to terms with this. There is power in being able to say, I made a mistake, and I'm reflecting on why I've made a mistake so that I can correct that moving forward. And, I hope I didn't let any of you down if you were using me as inspiration. This is what not to do, in essence. There's power in taking that stance. And instead, this juvenile kind of tantrum thing is going to be a repeating pattern in this phase. It's such a juvenile way of dealing with conflict. It's almost like, I know you are, but what am I? And she's turning it around on the audience in just a complete rage or defiance in that way, rather than actually saying, yeah, I clucked up and I'm going to try to fix it. Here's what I'm going to do to try and fix it. Maybe you can all learn from my mistakes, right?
Why did you quit Weight Watchers? Because Weight Watchers is a lot like MyFitnessPal or Lose It. It's a lot like a lot of those calorie counting apps. And I figured if I wanted to do something like that, then why not just do it for free? So as you guys know, I did stop doing Jenny Craig, and it's because I went to Gatlinburg and I didn't want to bring my food. I just didn't. I didn't want to bring my Jenny Craig food. And when I fell off then, I wasn't able to get back on. So Becky had been gone for 2 nights staying with her mom, and that was actually the day that she came home. So I fell off track that day. I would say it's been over a month where I have felt disconnected from weight loss surgery, like I wasn't ready. And there is a lot of personal reasons why I chose this decision. I have chosen to postpone weight loss surgery.
And Salty has one epic rant, by the way, about Amber actually blaming Beck getting back from their family trip for causing her to gain weight again. If you haven't seen it, you definitely need to go see it. I didn't want to steal too much of the essence,
Next, we have haters blamed for weight gain / tragedy / her attitude / giving up / disease. Now, I'm not really sure exactly what they mean by disease or tragedy, but basically, to me, this is talking about how whatever is going wrong in Amber's life, whatever bad things are happening, her mind frame, as she likes to say, in that moment, it's always the haters' fault. It's the haters in the reaction channels. If only they weren't around, her life would be perfect and there would be no issues. She'd be a skinny legend. But because of the haters and those darn reaction channels, everything's going wrong.
That just really opened my eyes that I can lose anybody due to horrible comments. And my vlog for yesterday, I am hanging out with 2 very good friends of mine who don't want to be on camera due to the hate that they have seen me get. Like, all people can tell me is like all this negative stuff. Like, it's mainly coming from like haters and such. Reaction channels don't care about me, neither do the haters. All they care about, how many views they can get, how much money they can make.
I went into this kind of informed consent in my AI Eugenia video, where it's like, Amber's been doing this for years. Like, she's been on YouTube for well over a decade at this point. She knows that people have been talking about her at least for a while, right? Girl World's been a thing for a while, a lot longer than I've been a reaction channel. And yet she keeps doing this. She keeps addressing it. She keeps going on this cycle. She keeps putting very private things online for people to talk about, which kind of does imply a consent in a way, because she could very easily turn around and say, I'm just not going to be talking about this anymore, which she kind of does from time to time, but then, starts talking about it again immediately. And it makes me think that this is just part of it, that she wants this to be happening. I think for her, she should not put any weight loss stuff online. I don't necessarily think anybody should put their weight loss journey online, because it puts it on the table for people to talk about, right? And then you start getting opinions and you start getting people telling you you're doing it wrong or that you're failing, or, even if it's just well-meaning people saying things that cause like a mental tailspin for you. It's just, for me, I would never do it. It's too intrinsically linked to my psychological well-being that I would never put it on the table for people to talk about. But yet we see this cycle over and over and over, and that's this vibe of defiance about this, like blaming it on the haters, just any sort of cop out that gets her out of this situation. And we're going to see in the next phase why that's happening, because they kind of 3 and 4 kind of bleed into each other, and they start to set up phase 1 again, which I think is kind of the point. And what we're seeing here is essentially that shame that can't be processed because she can't sit there and admit that she's wrong. She, for some reason, seems like she feels like it would weaken her position to admit that she's done something wrong, even though it would actually do the opposite. It would strengthen her. But because it can't be processed, it becomes rage. And when you can't face that you have failed, well, you turn around and make it everybody else's fault. And that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Now, this next one on the list, you're going to hear a lot of censoring during this because YouTube does not like the B word. So if you're curious, what is she saying that is getting censored? That's the word. binge.
And also, this is a good example of why I say that this particular chart is a little bit out of date, because we don't hear BED anymore. We hear BPD, and I will highlight why that's important.
And here's the thing about that. She came out a few years ago and said she does not have BED. So when you watch these clips, keep that in mind. She's going to blame so much on her BED that she now says she doesn't have. So I guess we're just supposed to assume that when she is eating the things that she's eating, it's because that's what she chose to do. And at the time, she was just blaming it on BED because now she says she doesn't have it.
And Salty Crab just highlighted the exact perfect thing there. Now, we're just going to call it the condition because YouTube does not like any sort of, what Eugenia has and what Amberlynn have in common. That cannot be talked about. You can say a lot of other things, but not that. So we're just going to call it her condition. And BPD, borderline personality disorder, is fine to be talked about, so we'll call that BPD.
I suffer from a food addiction and a disorder, and that's not something that's ever going to change overnight. It's not something that's going to change the minute I say, oh, I'm on a weight loss journey.
Yeah, so she now denies that she has that condition. Now, this is fascinating, from the condition to BPD shift, because the condition that she struggles with implies that she has a problem. It suggests that she might need to work on it, and it still puts complete responsibility on her, even if it's with compassion, right? So this is not something that we want to live with because we know it's unhealthy, and we know that it's a psychological condition and it can be cured with various types of therapy, including just do the clucking thing. So instead, she shifts to BPD, which she now acknowledges is undiagnosed. And what that does is gives her the ability to shift the responsibility, right? Because now it's like, my emotions are just too big to control, and I can't help how I react, and you're triggering me. And it enables her to maximize victimhood and minimize accountability. And we are actually seeing that playing out right now. She's essentially saying that she's not responsible for however she acts in the middle of a BPD tantrum or BPD rage or BPD meltdown. And she's splitting, and, it just becomes this shield that she can use whenever she is being challenged on things that are well within her control. And I just want to be clear on this. People, because I know that there are people in my nuggets actually that have BPD, and you all are fighters and you do such a good job and you deserve compassion. And you can do whatever you want. You're amazing people. But what I'm saying here is that whether or not Amber even has BPD, like, we don't know, but she's using it as an excuse rather than an explanation, and a shield rather than insight, or a weapon rather than vulnerability. Because a lot of us who have neurodivergence or personality disorders in any way, we use it as a foundation to be able to accommodate our brains working in a slightly different way to what neurotypical would do. We don't use it as just a free ticket to say whatever we want and treat people however we want. It's important that we understand ourselves, but it's also important that we take responsibility for our own actions and how they impact others.
Now, how many times have we heard Amberlynn say that she's just being honest? She's being real with her audience. Well, in this case, she says, I'm just being honest, or I'm being raw, I'm being real, whatever, in regards to excusing whatever behavior that she is doing or has done. So it's usually eating a bunch of food or falling off track, and she's telling us about it, and instead of feeling, kind of ashamed or disappointed in herself over it, she's like, I'm just being honest. I'm just telling you guys, just being real with you right now. This is how it is. Again, that is why this is the indignation phase. Because to her, as long as she's honest about what she's doing and being upfront with it, you're not allowed to get mad about it or to judge her for it or criticize her for it. Because, hey, she was honest with you. She told you what she was doing.
It's almost like she's taking what I was describing, that there's power in saying that you've done something wrong, but twisting it into her own agenda. And by the way, have you noticed that when she says she's being honest or being raw, she's being very rarely being honest in those moments, like provably dishonest? But that again is just another weapon that she can throw back. That this is all depicting a grown woman who has absolutely no conflict resolution skills at all. She's never developed them in any way. We are still operating on a primary school kind of level. I'm thinking 7 or 8 years old. The I am rubber, you are glue phase, this is what we're operating in, and it really helps to view these videos if you kind of detach your mind from the mid-30s woman and think about a small child and how they deal with conflict or any sort of uncomfortable situation that they find themselves in.
So that's phase 3, the indignation phase. Like I said, this is separate from phase 2 in that phase 2, she kind of acts oblivious. She's just living her life. She's just vlogging whatever she does for the day. Phase 3 is almost like her being a stubborn toddler having a temper tantrum. She is putting it in your face. She's like, this is what I eat. This is what I do. This is what I buy. And you guys shouldn't judge me for it. You guys have no right to criticize me. I have BED. This is all your fault, haters. If you guys would treat me better, I would succeed.
Fully nailed it. And I think even comparing to a toddler is not even necessarily fair, because toddlers have these tantrums because they lack the ability to be able to communicate exactly what they're needing in that moment. And there is a frustration that builds up because they can't adequately get across to us what it is that they desperately want in that moment, nor do they fully understand why they should be tempering their reactions to things. Plus, if you remember me speaking about the 100 scale, where as we grow up, our 100, our absolutely life-ending event that happens kind of scales with us. But when you're a toddler, you drop an ice cream. That is the worst thing that can happen in your entire life, which is why they overreact in our eyes to things that, an adult would not overreact to, because you're just like, yeah, whatever, I can buy another ice cream. It's not a big deal. But we're actually talking about a woman in her mid-30s. So she has all of those communication, like the language skill, right? She has that ability. So it's probably even not fair to say toddler in that way. She is just fully giving in to everything she feels. Okay, so let's break this down, because this is a very interesting phase. So we have this kind of blame tornado, if you think of it like that. We've got the haters who are like, there were stories of making her dietitian quit, or doxing her medical professionals, making her feel bad, stopping her from succeeding, and they're cruel for holding her accountable. And then the partners, Beck came home and made ramen, and I didn't include that in my video, go watch Salties, and they're enablers, and their mere existence causes her to fail. And we can add the mother into this now too. And then there's the audience, they're too negative and too demanding, and you all just want to watch me fail. And then YouTube itself is at fault because it makes her unhappy and there's too much pressure, and maybe I should just quit then, which is kind of a threat, uses a threat to the audience to make them behave better, which of course never works. And then there's the mental health with the different conditions, and she just can't help it, and the medical diagnoses is get out of jail free card. So it's just this roiling mess of excuses and how it is everybody else's fault, despite the fact that the only thing that is consistent through these cycles is Amber herself. And how this can look in a real life situation, something that you might have experienced, is the blame can be put outwards because we just can't deal with our own shame of having failed what we had set up and what we had wanted for ourselves. It could be that excuses that, no, I don't want to go to the gym because it's too busy, or I don't feel comfortable there, or, it's too expensive, or the timing is wrong. Where in actual fact, if you were looking to create a fitness health goal, you don't need a gym to be able to do that. Or if you're doing the budgeting thing, it's like, oh, cost of living is just so high, or it's just too inconvenient to do the bulk meal prep to keep budget down, and things like that. So it can, even though Amber is quite combative about the way that she blames everyone else, a real life example can still look like blaming the other things for getting in the way for why you weren't able to achieve your goal. And so another thing that we see in Amber with this phase is a lot of fake tears. I think I've only seen her actually cry once, like proper cry. And it really serves multiple functions, because of course it's manipulative. Like, look at how hurt I am by you. It deflects. It's used as deflection to shift her behavior to her feelings, which is what Amber is comfortable operating in, because everything is always about how she feels in that moment. It's also used as control because it's designed to make the audience feel guilty for questioning her. Like, how dare you? Why would you question me? And of course, the performance of it all, which is a running theme, which is see how real and how vulnerable I'm being. But everything always comes off as performative, because they're not tears of like genuine grief over her situation or real accountability. They're actually anger that she's being held accountable, frustration that her tricks aren't working on us, and rage, absolute fury that is disguised as sadness. And to put that in a real world example, I think a lot of us don't like to be challenged when we're like caught in our patterns and, being observed and things like that. It's really easy to get defensive when an external party is calling you out on that. And so like when someone's calling you out on your failings, I don't like to use the word failings, but the goal that was not achieved, you might get defensive, you might make excuses, you might blame the circumstances like I was talking about before. Things like, you just don't understand what I'm going through. And it can be used as a shield to basically say everything except taking accountability for your own situation. And like I say, it's not as explosive, I think, in most adults' lives as what Amber does, but it's still there to some degree because nobody likes to be called out for their failing, right? But again, this comes back to my 3 pillars. So motivation is a fickle mistress. What do you want more? And you don't have to do everything your brain tells you. So motivation is a fickle mistress. At phase 3, Amber is now facing that her motivation has completely disappeared. Like, it is long gone by this point. And she is angry at herself for not having been able to sustain it, because remember, she thinks that that should be the state always. And then she blames everybody else for this very predictable crash. In the what do you want more, her actions actually reveal that she wants to be right in this phase more than she wants to be healthy, more than she wants to change her life, more than she wants to save her life. She wants to be right. She wants vindication more than change. She wants the fight more than the goal. And it's almost like in this phase, the anger itself becomes the priority. And if you find yourself in this kind of blamey stage, if you are currently going through it, if you have gone through it, definitely tell me what it took to get through this. But if you're finding yourself in it at the moment, just as simple as saying, what do you want more? Your original goal, or whatever it is you're trying to do right now. What do you want more? Every day, ask yourself, what do you want more? And you don't have to do everything your brain tells you, because at the moment in this phase, Amber's brain is telling her, attack, defend, blame. You don't have to do that. You don't have to. I know that the feelings are really awful. You don't have to act on them. She obeys every single rage impulse and performs every single defensive thought. And it's like she just can't sit with the discomfort of accountability. And I cannot stress enough that there is just so much power in acknowledging that you've done something wrong and then turning around and working out how you're going to change it for next time. Tomorrow's a new day. But the biggest thing here that makes Amber different than a lot of other people, and definitely the thing that I resonate with very heavily, because this is the thing that I had to fight through, and that is the arrested development that's going on. So for whatever reason, and I'm sure that there was trauma in her history, it's caused her to not develop the same way that most people develop to in adulthood. Amber is not at fault for that. And anybody struggling with arrested development, you're not at fault for that in any way, but you are responsible for how you conduct your life moving forward. And acting like a teenager or a child and expecting everybody else to save you is not going to be conducive to a good life as an adult. It doesn't work. It's not compatible. So I often say that Amber is operating as a teenager, but in this phase, I actually think she's acting more like a primary school child. And essentially, just to draw a contrast, what emotionally mature conflict resolution might look like is you recognize you've made a mistake, you sit with those uncomfortable feelings, you feel shame, you feel disappointed, they feel yucky, I know. You might do the self-soothing that you've learned to get yourself through the discomfort. So maybe you do a puzzle, or maybe you go for a run, or whatever it is that your self-soothing mechanism is. You take accountability, you make amends or adjust the behavior, and then you move forward with the lesson learned. Isn't that fun? But what Amber's doing, she gets caught in the mistake. She cannot tolerate at all those uncomfortable feelings, because remember, she acts on every feeling, so she has to get them out. It's all she knows. She immediately externalizes the blame, lashes out at whoever's making you feel bad, flips between you're mean and I can't help it, and then waits for someone to rescue her from these consequences. And that's what I mean, that she's exhibiting that she's never learned any sort of conflict resolution, but she's also never learned any self-soothing techniques either. And I've talked about this a lot with Amber, because all of her go-tos don't work in these sorts of situations. You can't just eat your way through it. You can't just yell your way through it. She's got no way of managing her own feelings inside. And that's why we hear her say things to Emily like, "You're a psych nurse and not once did you ever come home and help me." Well, it's not anybody else's job to help you unless they are a paid professional. It's not a partner's job, it's not a friend's job, it is your job as the individual, but not anybody else's. And what this screams to me is like, you have like a sibling, if you take yourself back to when you were a kid, or maybe you have kids at this age at the moment, and it's kind of like child one does something to embarrass child two, like, I don't know, pantsing them or something. And then child two lashes out with anger at child one because that's the only skill set they've got. They don't know how to manage shame in that moment. It's like, as an adult, if that happened, you might laugh it off, or you might get revenge in that moment, or it's, I don't know, there's a whole host of things that would do to lighten the mood of that moment. But Amber just has no skill set in this way. And so instead, to self-soothe, what she's doing is mukbangs and shopping sprees and audience sympathy and partner enabling and yelling at her audience, and she just can't sit with it, rather than doing what adults do, recognizing the uncomfortable feeling, breathing through it, do your self-soothing activity. It will pass. The feelings always pass because that's what they do. They're like weather, they pass, and don't need somebody else, somebody external to make it better. And for the conflict resolution, what children do, they say things like, "It's not my fault. They started. It's not fair." And what Amber does is, "The haters are mean. They made me fail. Why are you picking on me?" Right? It sounds the same compared to how adults might approach conflict resolution, where I see your perspective and mine. I made a mistake and I completely understand why you're upset. Hold space for this complexity and take accountability without needing external validation. And, you know, the getting past the arrested development, it took me many years because you have to kind of do a lot of growing up and make a lot of mistakes that normally would have been done over years. You kind of have to do them in a relatively short space of time. And it is very uncomfortable and it is a lot of work, but you do it because you want better for yourself and you acknowledge that you're not living the life that you want for yourself. And you might also do it because arrested development impacts those around you quite a lot, especially if you're expecting them to come and rescue you and fix you. Although I started a lot earlier than Amber, I am quite shocked that she's gotten to her mid 30s and nobody's required her to even start doing this process. And even living alone, I would have thought that something of this process would have started. But what I've learned going back and doing research for like her chapter 1 and chapter 2 that I'm working on is that she is pretty much the same person all throughout that time. And that is concerning. I think that shows a real willful ignorance or even weaponized ignorance at this point for her. And that is probably the biggest criticism I hold for Amber, is that she's not doing it for herself and she's not doing it for those around her either. Like even Mama Lynn, she expects her to just drop everything and just come and save her at any point, including sending her horrible messages in the middle of the night while Amber was staying with Emily, saying that she's been horribly mistreated, and that must have been really difficult for Mama Lynn to be states away, not able to go get her. But ultimately, what all of that means is that she's gotten herself stuck in a permanent childhood emotional state, but she's actually a mid-30s woman with a child's emotional toolkit trying to navigate adult problems. So it's essentially what we're looking at. It's like asking a 7-year-old to manage their own healthcare and diet, handle public criticism, maintain adult relationships, and self-motivate behavior change. That's it. That's what we're asking a 7-year-old to do. So of course she fails. She doesn't have the tools. But having said that, nor is she seeking them. And I think the biggest message with this part, because we have talked a lot about arrested development, and it is a really, really tricky situation to navigate, and it's made infinitely easier if you have someone guiding you through it and accepting and acknowledging of the mistakes that you need to make during that time. But here's the thing. Growth is absolutely a choice, even when it's difficult. Avoidance is also a choice. And at this point, Amber is responsible for what she does moving forward. Everyone has their struggle. Everyone has reasons for their struggles. Not everyone has to stay stuck in them. And I hope that with my channel, I'm showing people that change is possible, even when it's hard, even when it feels impossible, and even when you have reasons not to, even when your past trauma gives you every excuse to stay stuck. It's possible to grow. It's not easy. It's not quick. It's not without work, but it is possible. If you're still here listening to me, thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. This is video 3. There will be one more, hopefully out as soon as possible. And an extra big thank you to all of my cluckers who are supporting on either YouTube memberships or Patreon. I appreciate you so deeply. I am currently 2/3 of the way through a very detailed deep dive of Eugenia's specific conditions. So if you can, and the can is very important, and you want to support, head on over to one of those locations, including single purchase options on Patreon if you prefer. Keep watching if you want to see this month's official Chook and Snack Crew introductions, but that is all the clucks I have left to give. Stay gold, my little nuggets, and I'll catch you next time. A big thank you to all of my Snack Crew supporters. Today, we are going to be trying blueberries for the first time. As far as I know, none of my chickens have ever had blueberries before, so we're going to be trying this out with them and see what they think. So thank you so much to Amy, Emlyn, All, Carly, and Bye Bye for supporting the Chook and Snack Crew. There are still 6 places left, so if you would like to join the Snack Crew, head on over. It's only available on Patreon. So I thought because we have so many Snack Crew supporters, which is amazing, I thought I would do an entire coop. So this is Freddie's coop. Now, Freddie is usually the rooster that you hear in the background of my videos. He's the most clear one that will pop up a lot. These are 3 of our very first chickens. And this is Freddie, Miss Florence in the front there. She is the black Australorp, and Miss Nikki Noodles in the back. Fun fact about Miss Florence, so she is some of our most dedicated broody hens. She will go broody for like 8 weeks, which is way beyond normal, which is usually 2 to 3 weeks broody. She's actually just stopped being broody within the last couple of days, so amazing timing for you guys. Fun facts about Freddie. He is my most cuddly rooster. He really loves to do lap cuddles, and basically if I sit down in the coop, he will be on me within seconds. And Miss Nikki is by far our smartest hen. So there is quite an intelligence difference between roosters and hens, generally speaking, but Nikki operates on a smart rooster level. She will hold a grudge for years if you wrong her. She has a very strong justice system and has actually put chickens in chicken prison before, and you cannot get anything past her. She will outsmart you at every turn. It's quite impressive. Regarding broodiness, Miss Nikki is pretty much the polar opposite to Miss Florence. Nikki has gone broody once in her entire life, and it was for a total of 4 hours. Okay, so for the second coop, Tay-Tay you've met before, but this is going to be mostly about his 2 girls, Miss Gwen and Miss Brittany. So it's Miss Brittany on the left and Miss Gwen on the right. Gwen is by far our sweetest chicken. She does not have a malicious bone in her entire body, to her detriment sometimes. Miss Brittany absolutely rules this coop. Tay-Tay likes to think he's in charge, but he's not. It is Brittany. Brittany's not super fussed on the blueberries for some reason, but Miss Gwen really likes them. And a funny little thing that happened with Tay-Tay this week, our neighbor had to move through the yard to get to something that he needed to do for the day. And I had Miss Gwen, I had this particular flock outside of their fences, and the neighbor took one look at Tay Tay and went, wow, that's a big rooster, and then realized, you could see the calculation in his eyes, that he had to walk past this rooster, and he took the widest berth around. It was like a good 3-meter radius around Tay Tay. But look how sweet. You shouldn't be scared of Tay Tay. He's such a good boy. But Miss Gwen was the one that has been on a health journey. She needed to lose some weight as she got a little bit chonk, and it's not good for her. So we've been doing daily walkies, and I've been walking with them too. But fortunately, just recently, she's succeeded in her health goals and has gotten out of the danger zone. But also, here's a bonus little Stevie girl. This is my cuddliest hen. She's not part of the stat crew today, but I thought you might like to see this. And don't forget to head over to Patreon if you want to join the fun. Thank you so much. Catch you next month.
Hey! Hey! I'm gonna go watch another video. Let's go!